So now that we have figured out all our tasks, what kind of objects we need, what kind of events we need to associate with the object, so the next step is to design our user interface. So in this designing, it's basically up to us how we want to design it, where we want to place our buttons or objects, or what kind of size and stuff like that. But you know and you expect something when you design or when you actually interact with some program or an application in Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever platform. So what I'm trying to say is that there are guidelines out there which are basically there so that a user knows what to expect. So when you're using Windows and some dialog box appears, you know where the OK button is, you know where the cancel button is, you know where the red cross button is so that you can close the dialog box. So there is a consistency in the design, and it's basically for the ease of use of the user itself. And so what we design, we have to maintain that consistency so that the user feels familiar with our application, and so that the user does not have to relearn the program's design, where all the buttons are, how big they are, stuff like that. So basically, a part of this is how the information is arranged. Is it information is stacked vertically or are they horizontally? And so these are like the two different ways we can align or design the information the user has to enter into our form. And another thing is that like all our different controls, objects, buttons on the form should be grouped accordingly. Like so, the personal information should be grouped. All the different buttons, calculations should be grouped, and so this is where the terms container controls come in, and we're gonna talk about it later on in the semester. But just a basic introduction would be that there's three different types of controls, container controls, like group box controls, panel control, table layout panel control. And what container controls are basically, they are controls which have basically controls within them. So suppose first name and last name are two different text box controls, and the group of control, and these controls are grouped together to be a type of container control. But we're going to talk about this later on. So here is an example of the two different types of user interface. The left one is the vertical arrangement and the right one is the horizontal arrangement. So you can see that in the vertical arrangement, you start with the name, then the address, the city, state, zip, and all that information there are arranged from top to bottom. And similarly, in the horizontal arrangement, the same steps, the same sequence from name, address, etc., but they're from left to right and then top to bottom. And then you go from the top to the bottom. So basically, it's up to you, whichever pattern you want to follow, even though I should say that in Windows, generally, for forms especially, the vertical arrangement is generally followed. And you can see the labels for group boxes. So like what we expect generally is that the personal information should be grouped together: the name, address, city, state, zip, and the different calculations like the total bears or the total price are grouped together. The different buttons to calculate, to print, to clear, to exit are also grouped together. So the group box control is basically having all the information, the panel, the has the numbers there, and the table layout is basically where you have all these buttons.